Hello and welcome back to Beyond the Bar podcast. I am your host, Denisa Tova. And today we have a very special guest with me who is truly a force to be reckoned with, Olivia Lee. Olivia is a senior counselor at Cohen, Clair, Greifer, and Simpson. And she is a woman who has an eclectic mix of interests and experiences from being an immigrant child to being a French major turned top-notch attorney. There are just so many layers to unpack, and do not let that quiet exterior fool you. Olivia, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Denisa, for having me. My husband, I told him I was going to be on this podcast, and he said I saw that Ice T is going to be on, and I'm, I was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. So I don't know how I will measure, but hopefully, I'm very excited to be here today.
I am really thrilled for you to be here. We chatted a little bit, and so this is also an opportunity for me to get to know you better. Now, you've mentioned a pivotal moment in your childhood with your dad that impacted your career, and it seemed like it almost planted a seed for your legal career. Would you care to share that story?
Sure. So my family, I was born in South Korea, and my family immigrated to the US in 1988, and we really came, with just a suitcase. And we were my parents didn't speak the language. I obviously was very young. Nobody spoke English, and he was working at the time as he was working at a house painting and construction company, and he worked incredibly hard. I just remember a core memory from my youth was there was one house he had painted, and some paint flecks, I think, landed on the neighbor's car. And the neighbor, understandably, was upset, and they filed a claim in small claims court. And to a group of non-English speaking immigrants, I recall my parents just being completely terrified by the experience. And the court process is scary when you have no idea, when you're unfamiliar with the process. And having looked through that, I remember thinking, I must have been 5 or 6 at the time. I was like, I never want to be in this situation. I want to understand, and I want to empower myself with knowledge of the process. And I think that planted some early seeds of wanting to be a lawyer. Not that I would say I grew up knowing that I was going to be a lawyer, but I think that was definitely the start of it.
That's amazing when you start connecting the dots, even later on, um, how it is all sort of how it all evolves. And not only didn't you know back then you did not want to be a lawyer necessarily, you were actually French major in college, right? How did you make a leap from being a French major, French literature to the law?
Um, so I come from a family of very accomplished individuals, especially in my generation. And my immediately older cousins, one was pre med and she ended up going to UC San Francisco. My older cousin, went to law school as well. And I remember my parents asking, what are you going to do? Why are you a French major? And well, I just liked it. I didn't know what I was going to do with it. Uh, but I was, to his credit, my boyfriend at the time, he says, you like arguing so much, you may as well make money doing it. So why don't you try going to law school? And I was like, you know what? Why don't I go to law school? And it just kind of came at the right time. I was graduating. I needed to figure out what I wanted to do. And I realized, I think being a lawyer suits my nature, and I haven't looked back ever since.
Yeah, and I think it was right around the time actually was pretty challenging because wasn't it right around the financial crisis, like around 2008, 2009 that you had to tackle?
Yeah, I was actually. a first year. I just finished my first year of law school, and we had just gone through um, the job fair. So I went to Cornell Law School, and there's a very kind of almost regimented program back in the day where you did something fun your 1L summer, and in the fall you do the job fair and you get your offer for your 2L summer. And that was all well and good, except in the middle of interviewing everywhere, the crisis happened, and there was a lot of
Mm.
uncertainty the following year. And, I think in my graduating class, there were unprecedented levels of unemployment. And unfortunately, I was among their number. And it really, these challenging moments force you to step back and really evaluate and reassess, what do I want to do with my life? Um, because you have a path that's planned out for you. And when things go sideways, you know, how well you adapt to that situation, I think is, it's part of growing up and being an adult. And thankfully, these things all happen for a reason. And ultimately, this turned out to be a blessing because it's how I ended up working at my prior firm and how I came into matrimonial law. And so I am exactly where I need to be today. And it all was part of that journey.
Yeah, the journey sort of getting inspired by the experience with your dad almost wanted to, protect, right, the family, and then arguing, as your boyfriend pointed out, but having a creative side. And I'm wondering, how do you feel your creativity fits into working as a family law attorney, dealing with people?
So you actually have to get very creative. I did do for a few years when I first started, I did a lot of commercial litigation. We did some unwinding commercial mortgages that were in foreclosure. And that's very kind of a drier subject matter. And it's impersonal because your client is a bank. Here, you're dealing with, when you do matrimonial cases, you're dealing with human beings who are going through a really challenging time. And, for us, I see hundreds of divorce cases all the time, but for them, it's their individual unique experience. And it's how you kind of present that to the court or to a mediator, whoever it is, to tell your client's story. And sometimes, how do you take what to the person hearing your case can be a mundane, run of the mill divorce. How do you make it seem compelling? And and that does require sometimes a fair amount of creativity. I think good lawyers, they are often on both sides of a case at various points in their lives, and you have to be able to have the flexibility of arguing one point of view, and in the next case arguing the opposite side. So, there's a lot of writing, a lot of
Yeah.
motion practice in matrimonial cases. And you're a storyteller. And so you have to be a strong writer and you have to be good at telling people's stories and kind of empowering them and giving them a voice. And that definitely does require some amount of creativity.
Right up your alley.
Yeah.
Everything you mentioned. Seriously, all these different layers, it just fit your personality, your skill set. That is so true, though, because when you're dealing with a divorce case, even outside of the parenting issues, dealing with division of stuff, assets, um, even the financial piece, has so many different layers. And you're right. And sometimes being able to think outside of a box, and then dealing with the emotional piece and really guiding clients through it. And so you're right, just being quick and a creativity. I can see how that would be super important. So stepping outside of work, because there's just so much that goes on, it's so important to recharge your batteries. How do you reset? How do you recharge?
Um, So, I shop online a lot. That's one
I love
way.
that you're so honest. I love it.
I am. I do. Sometimes I like sleep shop on my phone, and my husband is asking, "What are these packages?" I'm like, honestly, I don't remember. But the other thing is, I don't watch a lot of television. I think that requires too much focus and time. So I end up reading a lot of romance novels. I know we've chatted about this. I think
Yeah.
um, in my in my next career, possibly, I could see myself being a romance novelist, but that's
Mm.
definitely how I get my guilty pleasure.
You are so honest, and it's so amazing. I can guarantee you people do that all the time. They don't want to admit it. But let's talk about the shopping here a little bit. See, there's a difference. Ordering packages from Amazon. I know I used to be told, "Ooh, there's a package," and again and again and again. But wait a second, those are household products. Do you find that that we now tend to order stuff that we used to make multiple runs to the grocery store for? It's not all just shopping therapy, right? Are you are you so
Yeah,
in effect, it's not that bad.
you have to think, is it more environmentally friendly for me to run to the supermarket for those two things that I forgot and go back and forth? Or, I don't think it's efficient either way. But it's also, for me, it's a time savings thing. I don't have the time to run to the store every other day. And also, if I'm like, oh, I need toothpaste, in that moment, I'll just go and order toothpaste. So when my husband does ask, what's in all these boxes, I say to him, who do you think buys your socks? Like, there's no like magic sock fairy that comes, it's me sleep sleepily ordering on Amazon at 11 p.m. random things that we need in our house. I mean, don't get
Oh,
me
yeah.
wrong, I do for myself too, but definitely, I there's a lot of that.
Nothing wrong with that, and actually, I'm teaching my no, sh I have taught my 24-year-old daughter. She goes, "Yeah, mom, it's convenience. It's a matter of convenience." You're right, you'd have to make the trip, as opposed to it comes to you, and, yeah, it's, so it's a strategic shopping.
So,
You're a mom. You are a very busy mom, and you shared with me that your children are in various activities. One of them, I believe, was fencing. Is that right?
yeah, yes. My daughter, she's
Why?
7. I just thought I've always wanted a child who did fencing. I think it's such a beautiful sport. And a lot of younger kids, it's good for them to do team sports like soccer or cross. And I also think it's good for them to engage in individual activities, that eventually go to, if they're any good, a competitive level. And, it teaches her focus, it teaches her strategy. It's kind of a chess move in a way, and she loves it. So I'm happy that she's able to have that activity.
7-year-old fencer, right? You say fencer?
But sir, yes, I
Fencer.
think so.
I I rem I remember watching the Olympics even back in Europe and seeing it and never really thought about it as much as now that you're mentioning it and describing it and I'm visualizing it. It is almost like art, and you being an artist, that makes sense, but that is an interesting perspective, is to do something for yourself.
Mhm.
My kids were in team sports, the entire time, and I'm wondering, yeah, what would that would be like. Yeah, that is wonderful. We actually had an interesting discussion about parenting and being both, first generation immigrants, and the impact of, well, and how we were parented, how we were raised, the work ethic being very strong, and now, we want to give our children everything, but then we try to balance it, right, with how do you also allow them to experience, I don't know if I want to call the struggle, right, but to sort of, the challenges, like you want them to appreciate the experience and the things. How do you find that balance in the
So,
parenting?
I think it's definitely something I'm still learning and trying to figure out as I as my kids get older, right? I think witnessing my parents struggling and working hard formed so much of my own character. And on the one hand, you know, my doing my being successful and my ability to give my children an easier life filled with opportunities, that was the end goal of my parents working hard. And this is what they wanted to achieve, in a way in their life. So they were able to do that for us, which is wonderful. But like you said, my children live this very beautiful pampered existence in a beautiful bubble, and they want for nothing. And I worry that they take things for granted. They don't appreciate everything that is coming to them because they've never had to struggle for anything. So, in little ways, um, I guess the struggle is they don't have mommy at home with them all day doing catering to their every whim. So on the one hand, they do see their parents working very hard. My husband and I, we both work full time. We're in the city most days of the week, and we come, we're there all every evening, we're there on the weekends, but I'm not the mom who's able to volunteer at all the field trips and the kindergarten picnics. So, there's that, which I feel constant guilt about. But, I think it's also the little things in the home. They can't, if I say no to snacks right before dinner, they have to understand that I mean no, I mean business. And they definitely understand that. The good thing, I guess, is, and I don't know if it's all due to me in any way, shape, or form, but whenever my children do go on play dates or they go to birthday parties, the parents do always say to me, oh, Sylvie was so beautifully behaved and she was so kind, and same for my son Gus, and that's really nice to hear, that are growing up to be sweet children. And I think in the school system also, they're putting a lot of emphasis on teaching children emotional intelligence from an early age, which is something new. I didn't have that when I was in elementary school. And so, it's teaching our children to be, more empathic, they're understanding and reading other people's cues and kind of being more understanding and intelligent in that way, which I think is fantastic.
Oh, that is phenomenal. Many people, they can be evolved or not. They can be informed and educated. They can have the high, EQ, IQ, I should say. But then there's the emotional intelligence, and then there is, I believe, the spiritual intelligence. So I mean, there are so many layers to us as human beings, and being able to communicate in a way that's respectful, and not sort of bring the ego, the personal sense of self into every situation, not getting triggered by everything, just having, I think, more awareness. That is so, so, so important to learn from early on, so it doesn't catch up with you later on. Speaking of younger generation, I know you're very involved with the women's bar, and there's this ongoing debate how to attract younger attorneys to attend certain events. um what is your take on that, to get attorneys to show up, and participate, physically or virtually? Do you have thoughts on that?
I do. So I have the privilege of being a co-chair of the Matrimonial and Family Law Committee of the New York Women's Bar Association. And we organize a program every month, from September to June. And those, depending on where we are in the pandemic and the illness flu season, these programs have generally been have hybrid components, so in person and partly virtual. But if you're a young attorney who is seeking to get involved, especially the matrimonial bar is very small and most everyone knows each other because you're going to interact on some case at one point or another in your career. So getting involved in the committee, and it's a very big committee, is a great way to familiarize yourself and to network. And it's really critical for young attorneys because it's based, I think, it's mostly based on human relationships as opposed to going through a recruiting system. I think within the matrimonial community, it's different from big law where most of the placements happen via word of mouth. And so, if you impress an attorney and there's always someone saying, oh, if you know of any good candidates, please send them my way, and you make those connections and you show people you have an opportunity if you're there in person to share your personality and your story. These are again all built on human relationships. You have a human connection with your colleagues, opposing counsel, your own clients. It's a very intensive kind of hands-on career in that way. So if you're interested in pursuing matrimonial law, absolutely you should attend some of these meetings. Get involved with the New York City Bar Association, the ABA. You have to put yourself out there. And now that the world is opening up, you have to be there in person. I think because those personal connections, it's hard to make them always, on a Zoom or a virtual video call. It's just not the same as a one-on-one personal connection.
That is actually great take on this because I've had this even on these podcasts with other attorneys, and they're sort of saying, well, I don't know, what it would take. But that is an interesting spin. If you are a young attorney who is looking for a job or to change, to make a change, you just need to show up and make that impression, shake someone's hand, look them in the eyes and introduce yourself to make that connection that way. Because while it's okay to operate virtually in some aspects in this particular industry, not yet. Not everybody's ready to go virtual, and there are, people going through this transition, going through divorce, and when they have such high stakes children, the people with assets, I think they want to see, they want to meet with someone in person. So you want to showcase the ability that you can present yourself well, and there really isn't any substitution for that. So that is actually a great a thought on and how to present that argument to attorneys who are like, well, why can I not do it virtually? um you and we can have these we can talk for a much longer and I'll definitely have you back because this is really great. I mean, again, there's so much to you, parenting and even practice management, and there's just, we didn't even talk about technology. There's just so much, but it's been an absolute pleasure, Olivia, to really delve into your multifaceted journey and of a woman behind your title. And thank you so much for for sharing your journey.
Thank you so much for having me, Denise. It's always a pleasure talking with you, and even when we see each other at events, it's always people always say the kindest things about you, and I'm very happy to participate today.
Thank you so much. And for our viewers and listeners, you can find out more about Olivia Lee and how to get a hold of her by clicking on her bio link below. And do not forget to hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel, Beyond the Bar Podcast, and make sure to follow us on all social media channels with the links posted below. And until next time, stay curious and stay inspired.